Hello everyone, how are you? Nice to meet you again. Um, so I've been talking about Oracle Utility for a long time. I think it might getting a bit boring, so I start to think about maybe we can talk a bit more, maybe just more general on consulting. So today I was thinking about talking about one thing. Not everyone has experienced that, but as anyone in the project, any role, architect, developer, I think it's interesting to know what actually happens in this part. So that's about what happens before a project starts. So let's talk about a scenario where a customer, they actually want to find a solution for their business problem. Normally the first thing they do is they try to look at what are the products suitable for them, and that start with a process called RFP. It could be a public one or it could be a direct contact. When the business approach the vendors, the vendor would actually come out with estimates just for the product fee, and at the same time they would actually try to find a SI system integrator to help the customer for implementation. Now the SI is not necessarily in the same company as the vendor, because normally within the vendor, the consulting could be quite expensive for implementation, especially a new project, full scale implementation. It could be external preferred partner. So you always hear preferred partner of a vendor. And what happens afterwards is the, the SI will need to provide estimates and then try to understand what complexity would be involved in this project. After that, everyone is happy, contract is signed, then the, the vendor actually will just hand over the solution being presented to the customer during the sales process, and the SI will start their own discovery, etc. Now, there's a couple of things I think it's quite important in this process. So the first thing is about the handover. It's not necessarily the solution provided to the customer is always being used by the SI. The SI might have their own approach or they have their own way of discovery. So imagine the customer, they have only seen the version where the sales or pre-sales team has presented from the vendor side. Their first impression is it should work in this way, but it's not necessarily end up with that. I think the customer would actually understand it if they have done the IT project before, but if it haven't, then it might be an issue because they would assume they get what they see. However, on the SI side, they also face a much bigger challenge, especially when you come to a niche market or niche solution, niche product. At the stage when the product is sold to the customer, they only know a very little or very high level of requirements. But when it comes down to the actual implementation, the SI actually need to know much more details. Because for a system implementation, it's not just about functionalities. There are loads of other things, for example, data migration, security model, user hierarchy, These things are also critical and could sometimes heavily impact the functional process as well. So for the SI, they need to give a very clear indication what is the variance in terms of their efforts. Essentially, in the commercial term, how much more they might need to spend in terms of hiring and allocation for their team. Now, it comes to one topic recently to me is for a smaller SI. What is the best way to represent them? So we always say if you are looking at SI, they could represent their experience, their case study, their skills within the team. They are all very important. But what actually make it unique for the business, and how does that matter to the customer? With a bigger SI, the benefit is always they have the experience. Even not in this team, they can borrow experience from the other team. They have similar projects in another continental or in a very similar customer, and they can use this experience. But for a smaller SI, if you just present, okay, we will do this project in this order, and we will give a day rate, roughly. That doesn't seem to be very competitive, unless your price is really low. The other way of presenting is work with an accelerator. Now, this is something I would actually have seen this since maybe beginning of my career. People are saying accelerator is not easy to do, which is true because not two customer will be the same, even they are doing the same business. However, rather than talk about accelerator as a physical implemented product, maybe there is accelerator for approach. So if I'm saying I want to implement a billing system, and you can tell customer, okay, we have worked with this B2C customer before. If your customer is pretty flat in terms of the hierarchy, if your product model is very similar between these customers, give us a number of products, give us the number of calculations, different rules. It's quite easy to work out. Then the rest of it will need to come down to system integration, data complexity in order for the migration, or potentially data sync if it's not clear cut. So these kind of things could be represented with an accelerator view. That might be a better selling point for a smaller SI. Now, of course, when you look back at the vendor, they would hope to have more choices when they are selling a product, because with a smaller SI, it can give a bit more flexibility as well. However, it also comes a bit more risk. These kind of things is happening all the time. Literally, all the selling of a product, a project, will face similar issues. And I think it's quite interesting to share this process with you, because if you're working a project or you're just starting a project, maybe the first thing you look at is what the customer think the product is, think the solution will be. And that might be a good starting point for all the architects. Thank you very much, and I should come back next week. Bye.